The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon Kane. Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. Today I'd like to welcome Kevin Walsh and Daragh Ó Conchúir. Kevin Walsh is a former Irish Gaelic footballer and former manager of the Galway footballers. He won 3 All-Stars and 2 All-Ireland Senior Football Championships in his inter-county career with Galway. He also served as manager of the senior Sligo county team from 2008 to 2013. Daragh Ó Conchúir is a freelance sports journalist, author, editor and analyst commentator who works in print and online media as well as television and radio. He was the chief features writer with the Irish Field for 6 years. He is the current editor of Irish Racing Yearbook and the content provider for the Camogie Association, as well as the co-author with Kevin Walsh on their new book, The Invisible Game. So, welcome to the show, Kevin and Daragh. How are you guys?
All good.
All well. Thanks for having us, Simon.
Brilliant. Lovely to meet you guys. And, you're on... So, Kevin, you're around my Cullen side or in Galway side, and Daragh, where
so
are
I'm
you?
in the Midlands there, just outside Portarlington, on the Offaly side of Portarlington, yeah.
Kevin, you're Killanan. So, were you born there?
Born and bred there, yeah. Yeah, I'm still living there, so built a house maybe half a mile from home, so that's where I'm still there, yeah. Homebird.
All right. And Daragh, you grew up in Waterford, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've been all over the place, Simon, not as far as you, but so I was, my parents were from Cork, but by the time I was born, we were in the Ring Gaeltacht in Waterford, but I would have been reared as a Cork man within Waterford. And I've been all over the place. I've been in Meath, but I moved to Kildare in the 2002 and have been in the Midlands since. Was living in Monasterevin for about 13 years, and I'm here now about 5 years. It's funny, we were speaking about it recently, how the years pass and how you consider yourself and been away from home, but suddenly I'm in the Midlands nearly 20 years, which is almost half my life. It's funny how these things happen,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kevin, for you, growing up, did you ever have a stint abroad, or were you tempted to go on the buildings in England or anything?
Yeah, look, I suppose the far away hills are green at times, and I thought that in 1998. I went over to Boston for 3 months and spent the summer there, and kind of in my head would I stay or not stay, but I think the football and the club ethos and all that type of stuff was always in the back of the head. I missed it a lot, and spent the 3 months there, came home, and to be honest, I didn't do a lot of traveling after that for long term and a few holidays and stuff, but not the major. No.
As I said, footballers, they get a lot from football, and they, it can really help their careers and everything. But I suppose the one disadvantage is that in terms of traveling, if they want to travel, sometimes I suppose they can feel, I want to be on the county team or the club team, and it's very hard to travel and have that as well. So I'm sure there's a lot of great footballers that said, I would have loved to travel, but at that time, football was more important to me.
Yeah, and in particular, when I suppose if you're brought up with a club, and most clubs they're very passionate about the boundaries of where they're born and where they live, and both even as a young fella turning into an adult, you're mixing with your friends. The games is the banter. The games are always the reason why you might have a bit of crack afterwards with the group. And I suppose when you're young, you miss all that, and it's something that draws you very, very close. And obviously, then the home tradition and the home little club you're always trying to achieve, and that's before you even wonder whether you ever play county or not, or want to play county. You're kind of drawn towards home because of the people and the community as well.
Like, I found it's funny because I wasn't a footballer. I used to be into martial arts and karate and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing I always said to people, the one thing I found was you'd have fathers and mothers who yourself can be very, passionate about the game, and they would say, oh, and do you play football? And I'd say, no, I do karate. And they'd be like, oh, why do you do that? Why don't you play football? And I'd say, well, I'm more into that and stuff, martial arts and stuff. So as you said there, the Gaelic games, they're a very passionate thing in Ireland. And sometimes, like, in good and bad ways, they really take over people's lives, in the sense that in bad ways, people can be too passionate and the game can get too intense. and in the good ways, it does a lot for the community, and it also, strengthens young lads' confidence and gives them something to work towards.
Yeah, and then look at it again. We have to look at the social element of this. Like, I mean, some people go to the local pitch. All this in their mind is what I call now social football, and social football is something where it's off the cuff. It's enjoyable. There's no one telling you what to do. You're kicking the ball. If it goes wide, you have a laugh. But I suppose that's not getting to that level. But that's also something we have to, we kind of underestimate at times. Getting out on the pitch and kicking and social with your friends. That's really, really huge for people that might not ever be able to make the standard of a senior club team or a county player. But I suppose you are right. When it gets a bit more serious, there's a heavy commitment involved, and I suppose you do miss out on a lot. You miss out on the chance to travel. You miss out on probably your overtime if you're working. You miss out on a lot of financial stuff. But something, as you get older, you wouldn't turn that back, because at the end of the day, you don't see too many of your own people that's going to struggle to put food on the table. You'll always get enough, and something, memories like this is really, you'd be kind of in your 50s, 60s saying, why didn't I do this, or I'd like to have seen that. So, while you're making sacrifices in a number of ways, I think you get back in spades, to be honest, with the social side of it, and just achievement. And oftentimes it puts you in a good shape for life. You learn lots of lessons: how to win, how to lose, how to refocus, how to reset if things go against you. A lot of football teaches a lot of that.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing about it. There's great discipline in it, and when you're younger, you mightn't see it as much, but like everything in life, as you get older, it comes to the forefront, and there's things, in other careers, you can take what you've learned from football and put it into that, in the same way with a lot of sports. Daragh, for you, obviously you work a lot with sport and horse racing and everything. What was your passion for sport as you grew up as a teenager? Were you into football as well?
Anything and everything, anything and everything. I really loved all sport, and by the time I was 15 or 16, I knew I wanted to be a sports journalist, but I was just a voracious reader. And yeah, I played football, hurling, played soccer. We were mad into the race and didn't have horses at the time, but I would read front to back, and I would tell you anything about athletics, golf, cricket. I would tell you about anything, way more than maybe 30 years ago than now, because obviously I had nothing else to do, only read papers maybe at the time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, even listening to Kevin. I mean, I was never much good, an average club player, but I remember my late mother, when I'd been 19, even early 20s, and she trying to get me to go to the States during the summer, trying to get me out the door, and I wouldn't go because I was going to miss Club GA. And I wouldn't have been guaranteed to play every year. I was just in that borderline, probably a bit small, but looking back, I don't know, could I have been more committed? But I would be on and off, and get dropped for big games and that. But I'd come back next year and want to play, and a huge part of that was, and a huge part, I played until I was 40 at real junior Z level, but I didn't want to let it go. And I know what I missed most was the banter in the dressing room, the crack, the camaraderie, be that a social of a pint afterwards, but even in the dressing room and around training, and I've missed it every day since. So, but that was a huge aspect of it at any level. And it was sport, football, hurling, anything that moved, I was into it, to be honest with you. Yeah,
I can imagine, obviously there's all types of different people, and sometimes people go on different paths, but it's interesting, Daragh, that you had the blood of the sport in you, but then you, as you said, you were a voracious reader, so you kind of combined that that love of literature with the sport, and but you combined the love and you kind of turned it into a new career, didn't you?
Look, I did, and I've always considered myself really, really lucky, Simon, because we all know people. And I think it's difficult, and I think the education system is mental, that you ask kids at 15 to choose topics for the leaving cert that actually determine what you might do, or that you have to make a commitment that rules out half of things, that you have to decide your profession maybe at 15 or 16. Most of my friends didn't know what they wanted to do in their early 20s, but they had made a commitment. People ended up in banks or whatnot, and hated we all know people go into work every day, hate what they're doing. I knew, and it wasn't, maybe it was a phase, but I knew it was a thing I had a passion in, and I had half an ability to write, and I have no problem speaking. So I was lucky, and while work becomes work, ultimately work is always work, and you're doing the same thing. I know that I'm very lucky that I enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm still doing so 30 odd years after, so I was just really fortunate. I had that passion, but I had the ability to take it that step further as well, because a lot of people have the passion, but I was just able to combine the two.
Yeah. And, Kevin, here's a question for you, because I see this in Madrid and in Spain here a lot with the football, the soccer, because I work as an English teacher. And the thing is, I've worked in some schools, and I worked in one or two private schools where, they had the Real Madrid youngsters, so you could see the pressure on them, but you can see what the school does for them, because they're all kind of on these scholarships, so from all over Spain and Central America and South America and everything. But the thing is, it's really interesting, because when you meet those young lads, they all think they're going to be the next Ronaldo and Maradona and everything. But, the truth is 99% of them don't make it. And so I think that's the good thing about football, like Gaelic football in Ireland. You have far more chances, even though it's not a paid game, you have far more chances to turn your life into something and benefit from the football, rather than looking at Spain and say, oh, I'm only going to be playing in the third or fourth division, and maybe the monetary gains won't be that much. I think in Ireland there's far more to be achieved, even though the money's not there.
Yeah, look, it's an amateur game, and like, it always will. I suppose, to be honest, I think it always will be, because there's nobody being bought in from different clubs. You're rare to the people, like you said, going to school. And you were so right about sports. Like, you look at golf, for instance, and the amount of people who are below par golfers, and so I almost always describe it as getting a very good poker hand, but not good enough to win. And you put all you put everything you have into that area, and financially, time. And still, there's only going to be a certain amount of people who are going to make that step up in the golf for professional, or like you said, in Madrid, or and again, I suppose it's a big flop for people that don't do that. Whereas, like Daragh described there, in your clubs and everything else, there's always some division, no matter what it is, you can play in. As I said at the start, you can play the social side of it. It's still the same enjoyment. It just depends on what catches you and what you want to achieve. And I suppose the ability then as well obviously comes into the drive that. But look, at the end of the day, it is an amateur game. We're talking about it against a professional game, so it's kind of hard to compare it. We all go to work afterwards anyway, so we're not relying on our game for our putting food on the table and stuff. So it's probably a lot different, to be honest, Simon. But that's what the GA gives you. It's the amateur status. I don't see it changing, to be honest with you. When it does, if it does, where do your boundaries come? Where does your club?
Here's the thing. Obviously, you've probably been asked this question on air and off air a million times. But how do you what do you say, like, for the people who say that the GAA will never make it professional because they'll lose money, or they'll have to pay out money? Do you think that if the game was to become a professional level, and players would not have to work in normal, regular jobs, but could commit full time to playing, train more, and be paid for it, and be paid for appearances in games, do you think that would change the game a lot?
I do think it'll change it. I'm not so sure how it would work. It's like, you look at, I suppose we're talking go back to Buccaneers and Corinthians, and when I was young, you might see Fred Cogley on television on a Saturday. I'd be, those matches would be on, could be Clontarf, could be anybody of that, and then all of a sudden they put all the pressure, they put all their well, I suppose the top players went into provinces, and now, in fairness, we've got a really, really good 4 teams in Heineken Cups and whatever you want to call it. But I suppose rugby went to a place where you could be from Leinster, not making it, come to Connacht. You could be, if the GA goes there, I don't see it going there. I think the GA is too big to do that. If you look at even Connacht rugby, I could be wrong on this, something like 5% is against 95% GA. You know, it's probably a lot easier to handle that. But how do you, with all the people saying, you know, who deserves to be on that contract? You know, it's just hard. It's so minuscule between who's the best, and you'll always have the argument. Well, I should be on the first 15. The guy that's not on the 6 subs, you know, I should be on that team. The guy outside the subs, I should be on the sub. The guy that's left at home, I think I'm better than the sub in there. So it's so many people involved. I don't know how professionalism is going to take over. I do believe there's a lot of players at the minute who are being, you know, because of social media and because of sponsorships, are being well looked after at the top anyway. There's a lot of them being well looked after, a lot of them too well looked after as compared to what their teammates are getting, and which I find a little bit hard to look at. I'd be more about the team than an individual. I do think if some person is getting a whole heap of stuff as a player, maybe afterwards okay, but you know, I don't know if that bodes well with the other guys in the dressing room, to be honest. In particular, when you're trying to achieve. And again, that's to find a balance on that. So that's who am I to say, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think the one thing that I always take from living in Corofin for years, obviously, and seeing the way the football was there, and Gaelic football is very much, it is a county game, but it's, I think, first and foremost a club game. And the thing about it is, it all stems from the club, from, you know, the younger players all the way up. They nurture them and grow them, and they become who they are, and become, you know, they are professional in their stature and the way they play. It's just they're not getting the professional recognition as in pay, maybe. But the thing I think about it is, like you said there, if players were to start being bought and sold, some people might feel that's a betrayal of the whole community and club thing. So if a Killannon player was to go to Corofin, or Corofin player to go to Moycullen based on financial gain, then you might have a lot more politics and a lot more kind of bullshit and disputes popping up, no?
Yeah, I think so. And, you know, I think, you know, the amateur game, and I know Daragh spoke about all the teams he played for when he was younger. I would say he would safely remember all the volunteers that put all the work into him as a young fella, whether it be, we're trying to call it babysitting now, but back then it wasn't babysitting, you know. It was you were off, and you know, you're doing your best, but you always had somebody who was prepared to put in time with you. You know, the coaching level wasn't near where it is now, but it was what it was at the time. And the time was being put in by these brilliant volunteers in the GAA. So, you know, maybe 50 years' time, you know, I won't be here to hear the conversation, but there might be a conversation where things have changed. But, you know, it's almost like, as you said, a bit of a betrayal to the volunteers of all the work into you as a young fella to go past the border, you know.
Yeah. And Daragh, for you, obviously being more in the Midlands there, do you see like the same kind of passion for club football as in, let's say, Connacht, or do you see differences?
Massively. I mean, I'm involved in a small club in Kildare, and it's the second in the town of Monasterevin, Ballykelly Junior Club. Great facilities, but like, you know, it's just people working hard to keep the show on the road and not always winning, you know, competitions. And that's the thing that, you know, a club, any social outlet, and the same with you with the, you know, the martial arts and whatnot, it has to be about, while you're competitive and you want to win a game or win a cup or whatever, a club has to be about more than that. Because if it's only about winning games, it's not enough. You know, the culture isn't right, because it has to be about the community aspect of it, and certainly up here, but everywhere. I think that's it, you see, and that's what Kevin is touching on, that if you go professional, you will kill some part of it. And like, there has been an attack on basis of GA, I think, in the last 10 years, because the basis is those grassroots in the club. And just, you know, that would be a stride too much. But like, when you look at, listen, money does it, right? It does that. And what you have now is you people operating at an elite level, and you won't go backwards, because they want to get better and better and better. That's what they are, elite athletes. But once you put sponsors on a jersey, once money became a factor, once you raise bars, you know, you start changing things incrementally, and that then becomes, while money is pumped back into the club game. I don't know. Do we need all that money? I mean, and then next thing you have round robins and you're changing structures, and it's about accumulating more money. Mm-hmm. But like you won't change that, right? But that was a bit of an attack on the club. But one of the great positives of if there weren't many of the pandemic last year, was the introduction of the split season, which gave the clubs room to breathe, and that was welcomed everywhere. And you could feel the joy and the life within rural Ireland, especially that people had time and that county players had time to come back and train with clubs, because the clubs had a huge part to play when we were locked down initially, Simon. Be it bringing messages, prescriptions to elderly people. There's a club in every area in Ireland, and they are invariably at the heart of rural Ireland, especially. And I'm glad to see the club coming back to the forefront.
Yeah, well, I think that's important because you can see it, and even I see it more and more now. Having been in Spain for 7 or 8 years, I see it when I'm following the football, when I get a chance to follow it, and I'm following the club games, and I see more, how important the club is involved in football. If the club didn't have a good structure, I always think the county would be falling flat, and I think what it is, like you said, in those community moments during COVID or any other kind of crisis, that whole voluntary force that's there that helps out the club and the footballers and everything and the families, they all come together, and like that's a community thing, because obviously when you get together with the Galway footballers, the Mayo, the Sligo, whatever, they're coming together every so often, and they're taking their good values and beliefs and putting it into that county feeling. But it stems from the club first and foremost, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, it does. And Kevin, look, would have a very interesting insight in this, because I know Kevin, at his core, is a massive, massive Killannon club man. But then he played this length of time as with Galway, and then has been in management level. And like the county game, by the time he was at management level, was a different game and different level of commitment, even though it was big as a player than it is now. And like when you talk about those players coming in, but they probably have their own distinct set of values and culture now, because once you go into a county setup now, Simon, and Kevin will tell you, it is full time. You're away from the club at that time.
So Kevin, obviously when you retired from inter-county play and stuff, and you went into coaching, so you were in charge of the Aran Islands junior footballers. Tell us, was like obviously go in charge of the Aran Island footballers, that wasn't a huge step, but was it daunting for you to go into management, and even at the junior level?
No. Look, I've been managing teams long before Aran Island. My own senior team managed twice in 1997 and 2003. I've been managing teams in 94 all the way up of either basketball or football. So that was just, to be honest with you, what it was for me, that opportunity to go down Islands was actually almost to get a break from my own club, to be honest with you. And it was more just to get a freshness and just to put myself out there to work with people almost away from home. And I just wanted to take that on that basis. I suppose I've been so long doing stuff with my own club, but I played senior back in 1983. That was 2007. I was playing up to that next year as well. So it was just an opportunity to actually just spread the wings a little bit and manage a different team. And and that was it was a lovely thing to do, because I suppose even in a way when you're kind of one of the mainstays, or you're there working away with the parish all the time, you're nearly expected to do it every year. So it almost was a break for me to just spread the wings a bit. And obviously that probably got a bit of attention, because that was the first time I got away from my own club. And then obviously the Sligo thing came in the year after, and all of those were great learnings for me, to be honest. Regardless of what you do when you're going to management the first time, you're chancing your arm to a degree. You're bringing whatever you learn to the player, whatever smarts or thickness you're going to call it that you have naturally, and try and put it all together, and then try and get a good background team around you. So it's there's a lot of luck involved there as well. And then you have to hope that you have a very good group of players if you want to win. So a whole lot of variables for there, but no, the Aran Island thing wasn't in any shape or form daunting. It was It was nice to coach maybe a different people and have a look at their culture as well, Yeah,
and so obviously then when you went into Sligo in November 2008, did you, when you went in there, did you kind of, as you looked around and took stock of everything, did you have to kind of build things from the ground up there, or did you find there was a lot you could work with?
I know, when you're coming in from outside, you don't really know anybody. I mean, I ended up with 3 very good selectors. Lucky again, on the basis I didn't know what I was actually getting. I knew them as being 3 very good footballers for Sligo and highly committed. And if you're playing for years like that, there has to be a certain amount of commitment. That's where I went there. But it turned out very, very lucky those guys were there. Everything else was really from the ground up from me, because I didn't know many people in Sligo. I didn't know Sligo club football. I knew a few of the players, as in from seeing them playing a little bit. I didn't know the whole pile. So it was a lot of starting from scratch, to be honest. But I suppose I was lucky enough in the fact that, in 1998, 2001, John O'Mahony brought a lot of good stuff to our team. He had Eddie O'Sullivan there, who was a midget Irish manager in rugby, who was doing our strength and conditioning. Mick Byrne was there, who was involved with the Irish team in the Euros and the World Cups. And, and then he had other, Pete Warren and Stephen Joyce, who were involved in Galway club football, and many more. So I suppose having experienced that was a great stepping stone for me as well. And also, which I suppose, which is important here, is, my first 11 years at senior level for county, I won 1 Connacht title, and that's how poor things were. And Galway were expected to win one every 2 to 3 years. So I suppose you learn lessons from that, and then for it to turn around, 97, 98, and you took lessons from that as well, and maybe what made that turn around. And so to have that, I suppose, experience to be able to take to Sligo with me maybe 10 years, 7 years later, was probably a help. But it really was starting from scratch, to be honest.
And, obviously there's a very public thing with a certain player. I won't name him. You can name him if you want, but I won't name him. But that kind of, when you have a spat with a player over commitment and over training methods and things like that, is it hard to go back? Because, we've seen it in soccer with Jose Mourinho and Pogba and all of these kind of things. But when you're the man, on the pedestal telling, I know you're trying to be on their level, but at a certain point you have to be the boss and you have to take control. So when you get a player that goes against you and maybe publicizes it or tries to get his own way or whatever like that, it's very hard to go backwards, I imagine, no?
I feel the same, because number one, that has never happened to me in my 10 years career, because we'd always have a seriously, and Darryl will say this, a seriously open-minded, one-to-one channels for players to talk to us all the time, and vice versa. So without naming the player that you didn't name, I presume we're talking about the same person. He wasn't the player. So that wasn't, it was coming from somebody who was no longer a player, who decided to shout them out off for whatever reason, and that's totally outside my control. It would be very disappointing, as I said in the book, very disappointing for any player or ex-player to go and do that. But look, that's his prerogative. There was a pedestal there to use, and it was used, and look at whatever he got out of it. But certainly nothing takes nothing away from all the other players I would have dealt with over 10 years. And there was, you call it a spat. We never had a spat. Well, obviously, we had loads of one-to-one conversations. We had loads of difference of opinions, which we'd always talk out, because there's always a learning there for me. If you were a player and you have a different opinion of what I'm doing, I want to hear that, because there's absolutely no doubt about this. We're never 100% right, never. And even next year, if I was doing it again, I wouldn't be 100% right. So we learn from everybody. And I would have said to Daragh as well, I still, coach young basketballers. I've always coached basketballers going back 15 years, even when I was doing the football, because there's so much to learn by even dealing with kids, because they'll teach you if you're willing to be open-minded and not be, telling them this, because youth will always teach you something if you're willing to learn. So, so that's, I suppose, part of our management was always have the channels open, so there was no spats publicly, and there never was a public spat. And, Sligo and Galway, as far as I'm concerned, we've left on massive terms with them. Each place we were hoping we'd have stayed on. But we just felt for the good of the team, it was probably time to move on.
Yeah, I understand. That's good. That's true. And Daragh, for you, obviously, because with the new book, The Invisible Game, and you kind of went into Kevin's world writing this book with him, and you saw things from his perspective and probably other people's perspectives. But having gained that inside knowledge and putting the ink to paper, so to speak. How do you look at that situation now with the Sligo situation? Do you feel that that there's too much public pressure, and then once the press gets hold of something, it changes it?
Well, I suppose just in that, like the way the media is now, and the media, I'm part of the media, but there's it's very instant and it's reactive, and they love a good headline. And in that case that you were referring to, a guy happened to have a big forum, but he was probably allowed to say stuff unchallenged that he shouldn't have been allowed to say, and Kevin says it in the book. The big notable thing was that there was no follow up versions of support from ex-colleagues in relation to his claims, and the story died pretty quickly because it had no basis, and the support when Kevin's term finished was fairly obvious. As regards the pressure on management, it is absolutely insane at the moment, and the abuse they get, and the book starts with an example of this, Simon, when you get to read it. And listen, Kevin was able for it, and it comes with the territory. It's tough for family to deal with, and it's only getting worse now with social media and that, But and that's why these are people that are, willing. We talked about volunteers. These are people willing to give their time, and they're trying to do their best. Some will be better than others. Some won't be any good. But even if you were the worst in the world, you deserve to be called every name under the sun while your mother or wife is standing, next to them in the stands.
And, the thing is, Kevin, I think there that, a lot of that abuse you suffered as, especially as Galway manager and everything, I don't want to dwell on that because I'm sure you've gone over that millions of times already. But just, it's something that's part of the game now, and especially with Twitter and social media, people are like these armchair terrorists. They sit in the chair and they type their words, and there's no comeback. Like the thing is, you don't know them. You can't come back only in words. So looking back on your time with Galway, I'm sure that moment when you became the Galway manager was kind of filled with a sense of pride, but was there also a sense of fear because it's your home county? And did you feel a little bit more pressure because of everything you knew would come?
No, I didn't get any pressure whatsoever. It probably came a year before I wanted to come, to be honest. Look, I'd been approached one or two times before that when I was in Sligo, and I had committed to Sligo, and so I did feel at some point the opportunity would come, but I wasn't rushing it, and then it just came at that point. But no, I didn't feel that pressure. And just back to your point, there's only a certain amount of abuse. It's not all negative. I mean, there was, it's just unfortunate that the bits of abuse that comes there is by, like you've mentioned, there could be 20, 30 guys behind cowardly people behind a desk or with a false name, or it could be the one or two instances, and it was only one or two instances that I put in the book. That's all that happened, because I know, particularly after leaving, the amount of phone calls, texts, people I'd meet at matches and a clap in the back. It was lovely to see, and went on for months afterwards. And about, they're the real people that were supporting. They're the people that I put, I suppose, values on their opinions. And it's, like, you're not going to stop. We're not going to stop people with an opinion because of something that's in the head, whether it be a geographical boundary or just a bit of madness or whatever you want to call it, or not happy with a team or a club player not being picked, or you name it, what you want. But there's always a few people that just are going to use the forum because it's a nice handy place. They don't have to confront anybody, and they're quite happy to sit behind and do that. So I don't put any value on their opinions, to be honest, Simon. The only worst case of that is where, and I know players are young now and they're mad into media forums and stuff. So it does worry me how much of that stuff gets to them. It doesn't worry me about myself whatsoever, because we're well able to it. We don't look at that stuff. But I do fear for people. I think something needs to be done in these forums. It's absolute crazy kind of stuff that's written, and no matter how much you try to keep a young fella away from it or whatever, it's certain amount, and probably poor young lads are looking for a nice comment to give them a bit of confidence, and they go in and they find this all this rubbish. So I suppose, how do you deal with it going forward? It's very, very hard to know. And if young lads stay off it, I'm sure their sister or the brother will tell them anyway, and that's the way it's gone. But it's difficult, and I don't know. I think Daragh would be far more technically minded than I am in relation to social media stuff. So I don't know how we work it, but certainly something needs to be done as far as I'm concerned.
No, I think it's a big thing because social media in general, not just in sport, but whether it be in music or in film or whatever, I mean, it can ruin people's careers. And the thing is, if someone has a few drinks on them and they say the wrong thing on Twitter, that could be the end of their career, you know? So you can see it destroying lives. But the bigger thing, I suppose, for young sports people is the whole mental health issue where they take everything to heart. It's once it's written, it's always there. And it's kind of like when you're in school and you were younger and someone gave you a nickname or slagged you with a nickname and that name stuck and you were never happy about it, but there was nothing you could do. You had to either be bullied or fight your way through it or whatever. But nowadays it's this mental bullying. And when you consider a young lad or a young girl playing basketball or football and they do their best and, they're vulnerable and then they have to read stuff about them and they don't know who it's by, and it's not like the bully in the playground, it's somebody across the world, even somebody, an expat living in New York who said stupid things. It's really, really disheartening, and you can see how it can really affect the mental health of young people and teenagers.
Yeah, and I suppose, it's like everything else, whether if someone is achieving or the jealousy's there or there's different things there. But I suppose it's just life that the people who genuinely know you're doing well, maybe we're a bit slow to maybe clap someone on the back for doing well. And I think if you were to actually go out and maybe put people and make them all put their hands up, who think you done well, who think you didn't do well, you'd have a massive amount that would say that. But it's always the person that has something negative to say that comes out. And unfortunately, I think Daragh hit as well. It's looking for a headline. Unfortunately, in the media, the people aren't very well informed or maybe chancing their arm or looking for a bit of exposure. They will use whatever they want because they just probably aren't that type of person who will be of the caring sort. So, other than caring for themselves. But again, I think the onus is on the likes of, especially the national media, to start looking at this and say, make people, if they're making comments, back it up with complete fact, basis on fact, and also that they should be challenged. I've made this point in the book, and even in relation to analysis and RTE, the biggest forum in the country. That it would be far better if whoever's making those comments that they're actually allowed to be challenged. So, for instance, the incident you spoke about early on, unfortunately, because of how the media works, and there's one program for an hour and a half per week, it's pushed over what I said the week before. It's important that anything that somebody says, there should be a challenge for them on the basis of that there's no fact to back up stuff they say. That's my own opinion. And I think even going in the media now with the youngsters involved, maybe something like that can come in as well, where there needs to be fact in what people are saying, or else put their face out there, not hiding behind a false name. So whatever way, but
it
does need to be
looked at. That point there you hit on, obviously, with the analysts, there's a certain few analysts that have been there for years, and I know you were kind of public and saying that you don't know, should that be the situation, because times have to move on. Like, you can't be a manager forever, you can't be a midfield player forever, you can't be an analyst for 30 years because maybe you don't understand the game the way you think you do. And you can be an expert in any field, but if you don't refresh that and do courses and learn new things, maybe your opinion isn't as valid as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I've made that point in the book, to be honest, because I do believe not only is that kind of effective, what you've said there, Sam, but it has a massive effect on the whole country as to how they view the game of football. Because the game of football has got a very negative, even though if you look back on the games, even 20 years ago when we were playing ourselves, there was a lot of poor stuff in those games, and we were lauded for it. But there was a lot of poor, if you really want to look at it, there's a lot of poor stuff there, and that's improved immensely with all teams, because of coaching and because of technology. But unfortunately, the analysis hasn't moved on with it, and I think everything is fact by perception, which is very, 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 very wrong. And that's why I'd be pushing for those guys to be challenged, because perception is reality. And if you've got, 1.5, 2.5 million watching football, and they're listening to this kind of stuff every Sunday night, that's the view they're going to have of the game. They're not looking for the stuff that could be publicized a bit stronger, where the game has moved on. So that maybe in 5 years' time, people are looking at a completely different game. And they can see why things are done. They can see why people cover space. They can see why people make space. They can see why people may not win for a tackle, or they may win physically, or may not win physically. All the stuff is spoken about in the book. I think it's really important that people understand why you do that, because in the background somewhere, there's figures to back up all this. In particular, at the higher level, there's facts and basis for what coaches do if you want to achieve. And again, look, I will say this, unless I'm looking at some counties at the minute who have an abundance of talent, and they're not winning All Irelands. And it can't be just that, well, Dublin are so good. They should be challenging for All Ireland, but I do believe that they haven't actually moved on yet in relation to where this needs to go to, because they've probably been held back by this old tradition talk. And again, do you want to play social football or do you want to win? And those are the questions that there's nothing wrong with either. But just to be clear, social and win doesn't come in the same sentence. So it's, am I going socially and stick with the old ways and say yes because I'll do this because my uncle said it? I go train on a Tuesday night because my father done it. You have to evolve and move on. And unfortunately, we're being held back in the football. The hurling has moved on. I mean, I've watched one or two seriously poor game of hurling, and the way I was looking at an RTE and I was listening to them, and by God, it was the best game of all time. So you've got two conflicting things on at the minute, and we really need to shape up the football side of things and get people who understands the game to talk about the game, to get the full reality out to the public.
Yeah, you're right there. The hurling has evolved a little bit more because you see it now as well. And Daragh, probably covering the other sports, sees the evolution of other sports. But I see it myself as well with the hurling, that now other counties have come forward and are much stronger than they used to be. And there's a better balance. It's not just Galway or Tip or, Kilkenny. Now you have Limerick, you have Waterford, you have so many counties now. And I think that's through the evolution of their training, their regime, everything. So maybe there's more science needed in the sport of football, and maybe there's more we can learn from hurling as well. So Daragh, I want to ask you there, just what I was saying, when Kevin was saying like how some sports have evolved more than others, because you're involved with horse racing and everything. Do you see comparisons the way the game has moved on in football to horse racing and other sports that you cover?
Yeah, it's funny. We're only talking about it. I've been on TG Car coverage of racing the last 2 months, while there was no GA and that, and we were talking about it, how actually racing, the actual race itself, so that hasn't changed at all. A race is still a race, but everything around it has. How jockeys in the last 10 years prepare is just changed beyond measure, because they didn't view themselves as athletes, and because you have to make weight, there was this age-old perception of the way to make weight was not to eat or to sweat or to binge and then sweat, and that, so they had huge bulimic issues, bone density issues, mental health issues, and they are all big issues still. But now they have, with the influx of sports science, conditioning, they now understand that it's better to have a breakfast and go to the gym than not eat, and then call into McDonald's on the way home and then have to sweat it off. I mean, that's what they did, and of course you write dehydrated. How can you be as well, So that is only changing in the last times. Training people, train race horses, that's evolving all the time. Different ways of doing it, be it interval training or, it used to be long, slow stuff. And now interval training came in maybe 20 years ago. And again, a lot of it is similar to what you do with humans. I would say, Simon, that football has evolved, and in terms of the training, just as much as the hurling. I think the point Kevin was making was the evolution of how it's publicized. So it's the pundits are so pro hurling. It's all positive, 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 whereas it's all negative, negative, negative in the football. So that's right. The message we're fed. Suddenly, it became a bad thing. Work rate became a bad thing. This puke football term, where 3 people came back to tackle one person. Surely that's a positive thing. It's viewed as positive in hurling when Kilkenny hurlers started it, but it was viewed as a negative in football. But the same thing was happening. So that's the issue, I think, with football. It's the perception that Kevin was speaking about.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
I was going to actually come back for that. And Daragh, thanks for clearing that up. That's exactly where I was coming from. I'd be straight. I think football has actually far more evolved than hurling. It's fair. So it's not that. It's the analysis of it. And like the hurling is now starting to play a sweeper and stuff. I genuinely believe football has evolved far more than hurling. You're going to see an evolution in hurling coming up, I think. It's only starting, where the football is probably 10 years ahead of it. And that might be a strong comment to make. The issue I'm talking about is absolutely very clear on this. What Daragh is saying. It's the commentary on both. The hurling side of it are very complimentary towards the game, regardless of what happens. The Gaelic is just it's gone in one one way all the time. It's kind of a silly message without any fact, and it just needs to up its game big time, because it's actually killing the game, and it doesn't deserve that.
Yeah, no, I do understand. I did understand what you meant, but what I kind of meant, I think what I was saying about the evolution was, like, you have Dublin, which is such a big county, but what I mean is that there are so many other small counties. There's not a great balance in football. There's 2 or 3 top counties, but I feel that hurling as a sport, you look across the board now and you say, wow, there's some strong counties there. That's what I mean by evolution. I don't mean so much about the training or the sports science, but I definitely agree with you that the commentary is on both is very different. And I think sometimes watching these kind of shows where they analyze the game so much from former players, I see it here. I watch sometimes the Spanish stuff about the soccer, and you're kind of like, who the hell are these guys? What are they talking about? And they give the players dogs abuse. And, it's kind of like the more negative you can be, the better ratings the show gets or whatever. And I always say to people, for me, this podcast, I always try to keep the podcast positive. I don't want to be running down anybody. I don't want to be negative. I want to try and keep it as positive. But there's too many shows now, reality shows and, shows with people changing the way they look and everything. And they're focusing on the negative too much. And as you said, the punditry and the analysis in football is pretty bad at that sometimes, isn't it?
You were talking about soccer there. You see a goal, and what's the first thing that's decided? What went wrong? It's never what they do well to create that score.
Yeah.
So it's the perception straight away. That's the problem. I mean, both exist. If you're the coach of the team that conceded it, you're going to be going, right, what could we have done to stop that? That's what you should do. And analysis should give you that. Like, analysis should give us, the punter sitting at home, just something a little bit more that we didn't understand. Give us insight of the modern game, where either club golfers or where club footballers or soccer players, but we don't know the nuances, that if he stepped 2 steps to the left, he could have put that off. That's the sort of stuff Kevin goes into detail in his book. That's fine, but it's always that negative aspect first. Why not start with, that was outstanding in the creation, the way he lost the player, the way he moved, whatever, and then say, okay, it could have been stopped going this way. But it's always, that was appalling. He's a disgrace as a human being.
I think, the one thing there that Kevin said, and I think it's a really valid point, is that even the analysts and coaches and people watching, they are focusing on the negative when they should be focusing on the positive. It's kind of like, if you're doing anything and somebody excels and they beat you at it, you should look and say, okay, how can I up my game and how can I change that to be as good as them? I was reading this story the other day about Kobe Bryant, and one player, I can't remember his name, he turned up at the game and he heard Kobe Bryant, shooting hoops. And he said, I was like going in, getting ready, and he must have shot about 200 hoops, he said. And I came out and I trained on the other end of the court, and it was before a big game. And he said, while I was training, he was training just as hard, shooting hoops all the time. So he said, I finished and he still kept going. And he said, so after I changed another 20 minutes, I came back out on the stands and sat down and I watched him, and he kept training. So he said he trained for nearly 3 times as long as I did. And so after the game was a couple hours later, it was like warming up. And he said during the game, Kobe Bryant bet us like by 40 points or whatever, he just annihilated them. So he went up to Kobe Bryant and he said to him, why did you put in so much training? And even you stayed when I was there. And he said, I stayed because I knew you were watching me. And the point is that to be a top player or elite player in any game, you have to look at not the negative stuff, but the positive stuff you can gain from that guy who does score the point or who does score the free or whatever. You have to say, how can I raise my game? But unfortunately, the outside world sees the negative. He failed. He should have stopped that.
That was also, like Kobe, that's the sort of mental aspect of the sport at elite level as well, isn't it? Which is very, very intriguing in itself. But that's it, and listen, elite sport is amazing, as we keep saying, has been mentioned numerous times. There are lessons to learn. I'm not going to use the other word that's now come into the lexicon. Learnings.
Learnings, yeah.
And it's up to you to choose to pick them up, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book for a minute, lads. So Kevin, when did you kind of think to yourself, I'd like to put pen to paper. I'd like to write about my career so far, and obviously to growing as a coach, put stuff down on paper that your beliefs and what you wanted to achieve.
I'll be honest, Simon. I never thought that. It was nothing I was ever thinking of, and I never had intention of it. It was just a Liam Hayes happened to contact me, and it certainly wouldn't be. I suppose a lot of people are actually being surprised I would have written a book. To be honest, that way I didn't write it. Daragh wrote it, but it wouldn't have been ever on the top of my agenda. It wouldn't be on top of my agenda whatsoever. Certainly not now. But when Liam came talking to me, I did genuinely say to him, look, I'm not the type of person who wants to put everything out in the washing line. I just not the way I am. Wouldn't be massively looking for attention or looking for jobs at that. That's not the way I am either. But so I said to him, I don't think there's actually a book in me, to be honest with you. And he said, I think it might be, blah blah blah. So we met a few occasions, and when I started to actually open up on the coaching side of it, that seemed to intrigue Liam, and because he obviously been a player himself, winning All Ireland with Meath, about how it moved on, and so we spoke at length about that, and he kind of came back to me and said, Kevin, I think there could be a book on this, providing you can give a little bit about yourself and head down the coaching and just balance it completely, because he said, this is something that nobody has ever spoken about to this degree, and would I be interested in that? And to be honest with you, I would be very interested in that because of all the reasons I spoke about before now. I do believe that people should be sharing information on what's happening inside the bigger camps at the minute. I do believe that the public need to see or have an idea of what's happening, so that the public can actually look at the game in a different way. I think it's really important. And what's wrong with sharing information? I mean, if I'm sharing information to anybody, it's something new and that for them. There's a lot of time to learn even what I'm talking about, and I hope people do that because it evolves the game, and that then would put a little bit of pressure on me to actually make myself better, to be ahead of the posse again if I ever go back at the thing. So I've no issue in doing that. So that's how this came about, to be honest with you. And with a few meetings, and then Liam said, yeah, look, there's something in this. Then obviously Liam and pointed Daragh, whatever way they worked between themselves at the time, and I had to say that, the last year and a half, it was a pleasure working with Daragh. Maybe some other book writers or some other personalities might find that difficult. I would thought I was going to find it difficult. There's certain things you find difficult in it, but working with Daragh was a pleasure. So he made that very, very easy. And to be fair to him, because we wouldn't have been in dressing rooms of the elite sports in Gaelic, to put it in the writing he done, I think he done a really, really good job for the public to read it in the layman's term as much as possible.
And Daragh, for you then, like, how do you, obviously you had another book, with the whistleblower, and you were with the Alain Roland, and if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and so that was obviously focusing more on his background as a referee and everything. So you have to put yourself into their mindset and kind of go into their head and see how they, looked at things through their career. So when it came to obviously working with Kevin and, thinking how an elite footballer thinks or used to think, and thinking how an elite manager thinks then, how did you go about that? Like, was it a difficult process?
It's not, though. It can be daunting on this one, because we knew this coaching element was going to be a big element of it. So therefore it was going to be a GA memoir like there had never been. And I did find that daunting, because I didn't know how we were going to present it and make it presentable, because it is nuanced and fine detailed stuff. So listen, it's just a bigger interview, in that you do loads of interviews and it feels like a bigger feature, and your sections, you still have loads of sections, and it's conversation and conversation and conversation. And I think it was really helpful in that, and I had no clue obviously about elite GA, but the fact we have pretty similar principles, I think, on a lot of things, and I would have coached with my club, and maybe I hadn't the language that Kevin had worked out. I hadn't the terminology, but my processes were similar, so I could envisage a lot. He was able to explain to me, and I could envisage a lot of what he was talking about. But we got on fairly quickly, which is important to the whole process. And if you don't, it's very hard, because he's allowing me into his home. His family are there; they're a bit protective, and they have to open up to a stranger. So you have to become not a stranger fairly quickly. And it isn't we're best friends, but I think we could go and have a pint now. We he became comfortable. The lads became comfortable with me, Mary and the lads, and that's really an important part of the process, as it was with Elaine and Missy and the kids there as well. Because you're giving up a lot of your life, and you're trusting then how it's presented. And while Kevin, is obviously okay in the whole lot, they're placing a huge amount of trust in your hands. And then I feel that trust. So there's a responsibility comes with that. So as a process, it can be bruising, it's draining, it's hard work, but really enjoyable. And then the end product is out there, and you're just really proud. And I do think there isn't one like this, and there hasn't been a GA book like this.
A point there, or a thing I would think about, if you're a writer and you're approaching, like you're working with somebody, sports star, celebrity, whoever, you're saying to them, tell me about this moment in your career or in your life. And maybe they're saying to you, I don't know, do I want to talk about that? Because everybody has different thresholds of privacy. So much in the same way, if I ask a question, you mightn't want to answer it. And I'm trying not to be pushy, but as a writer, is there a part of you that was saying to Kevin at times, I think that would be good in the book, though? And he's saying, I don't know, do I want to put that in? Did you have moments like that? Kevin, maybe you can answer that.
I'll let Daragh answer that.
Yeah.
We have one or two, but like nothing major, but just one or two. But again, consensus. We'd have come to consensus. There wouldn't have been a row. There'd never been a loggerheads.
Yeah.
You'd make the argument. And because you were meeting umpteen times, maybe it would end in a way and you just let it lie and go away and come back again. Ultimately, everyone had to see the value of what was going into it and what it was adding, or what it would look like if it wasn't into it. Kevin didn't want the big, and we didn't want the big, headlines, negative this, that, no more than that. Wasn't what we wanted. And his story is such an inspirational story. It didn't need that. Obviously, there are a couple of elements that happen, and they have to be in it,
So what I was going to say to you there, obviously the book is broken into 5 parts. So without giving stuff away, because we want people to read the book, obviously, but would you be able to take each part? Let's say, Kevin, you talk about the first part, and Daragh, you talk about the next part. So Kevin, if I said to you, the first part, home game, could you just summarize that very shortly, what that is?
It's starting off with the chapter of I suppose the maybe a negative one, but it's starting off with maybe a supporter that would have been over the top and abuse and stuff like that. So just probably it goes directly straight into I suppose the challenges that face people in life in an amateur game, and it was mainly about that, and about your home circumstances, a little bit of where we grew up. I suppose the culture and values that we held high as maybe a family growing up in a very small kind of a farm, and they just, I suppose, your upbringing, your values to a parish, things like that. I suppose they've already kind of spoken about. So that's really where you're heading.
Okay, and Daragh, so go the play in the game then. So give us your take on that. Summarize it. Don't give too much away.
It's probably self-explanatory. As I said, I think that home game part was very important, because it shapes Kevin. The play in the game is the playing aspect of it, particularly how it started off with Killannon, and then moving on. Those travails that he had, be it so many injuries, and as he mentioned earlier, which helped him going into Sligo. Setback after setback after setback, nearly been gone, and then having a lot of success at the end of his career, and continuing on with the club and having some great days. And there are some hopefully very interesting stories and insight.
Yeah. So Kevin, I'll ask you lastly, we won't go through every part because, we don't want to give, as I said, too much away. But the name of the book, obviously, is The Invisible Game. So give us just a summary of that part, The Invisible Game. Because some people will be thinking, what does that mean? Does that mean all the bullshit that goes on with politics in GAA, or does it mean about like training methods? Give us a summary of what that could entail.
It's mainly, like I said, it's mainly, if you want to call it behind the scenes. Well, like if you're playing a football game and you're not actually on the ball, can you impact that game without the football in your hands? And we totally believe you can. I think it's highly underestimated and highly undercoached, and it's the little things that matters. Where do you hold your position when you're off that ball? Where do you have the biggest impact, whether it be in attack, supporting your own players, or in defense when it looks like you don't have a job. I mean, actually, in fact, you do have a job. If you understand the invisible game, they can impact your team. It could be the difference between winning and losing. Because at the end of the day, when we spoke about the social side of sport, most people do want to win, whether it be junior B, junior C. People like to win, and it's learning that invisible game. We spoke about other sports, how Shane Battier, a basketballer, is in there. How he was known as the no stats all-star. He was an all-star, but his stats didn't show that because all the work he was doing was almost invisible. But when they look back on his career over 13, 14 years, they saw all the stuff. He was getting in the spatial awareness. He was getting in the block for somebody else. He was blocking off another guy so his own teammates could catch an easy rebound. But he wasn't prepared for stats. So he was doing all this effective work for his team. And one of the reason they looked at him is because everywhere he went, that seemed to follow him. And it was it ironic that every time he played, the big stars and other teams didn't really have a good day out. So do we put that down to the LeBron James didn't play well, or was there something else there? And again, I challenge that in Gaelic, and if we look back on even our own, good time, there's lots of big players there that probably didn't play well, according to people, but maybe there was something done that was affecting how they played, and ultimately that does allow you in with a better chance of winning. So I suppose you're really looking at, and again, I go as far as county boards, I go as far as your own values and help support at home. That's all invisible stuff to people. Do you get support or don't you get support? And, if you don't, you're going to struggle a bit more. So it's an invisible game all around you, bar being on the ball, I suppose. But do take a lot of stuff into consideration, Simon.
Yeah, I understand. It's more the framework, the structure, everything that makes the game possible. All of those things.
Yeah, and I'm sure, maybe Daragh, I'm sorry I let out a little bit there. You might want to give a word next yourself because, in fairness, you were part of the naming that name.
It was just, again, it was such an important element of what Kevin wanted to do in the book. This was this coaching, this insight. So it is the invisible aspect on the pitch itself, but all those other aspects. So it is the framework around it, but it is then on the pitch because, as Kevin mentioned, Kevin has a stat there, 69-1, 79-1. So if we called an inter-county game, is roughly 80 minutes nowadays. The very most any one player will be on the ball, in possession of the ball in a game of football will be 1 minute. The average is probably less than that. Wow. So Kevin's point is, if you coach for that 1 minute, is that not insanity when there's another 79 minutes you're on the pitch? Should you not be coaching? And that's the invisible game. How can you influence the game for the 79 minutes of the 80 that you don't have the ball? And that's what I find intriguing. And that's really on the pitch what the invisible game part is about.
Here's a question. Kevin might answer this better. But Kevin, nowadays, obviously, with the improvements in, scientific methods and technology, you hear of golfers using, body analysis of their shots and everything, and it's in a lot of sports. Can you see that, if it's not, maybe it's already there, can you see that coming more into GAA where players are wearing things that the coaches can go back and look at how many steps they took? And is that already in the game a lot, or is it coming into the game?
It's too slow to come into the game, to be honest. Even before we wear anything, I mean, again, a lot of this is in the book. This is exactly what we're talking about: body position, footwork, balance, all the things that make you a better footballer. We're pumping iron in the gym, we're lifting massive weights, but yet do we have the strength on the pitch if we don't know how to move our feet? And all this stuff has been missed, and this is the invisible game as well. So before we even go to wearing stuff like that, I mean, there's so much technology there at the minute, and that's why we've done this, and we set up our thing called Grow Coach, that we've been in, myself, Brian Sage and Sean Condon, and we've about 200 videos in there. And a lot of those videos are based on actually looking at people's footwork, looking at their balance, looking at the positions they take up. So we're actually doing that at the minute, and we're really, what we're doing there is trying to coach coaches how to coach players, how to make an impact more often. So we're actually starting that at the minute through Grow Coach. I don't believe this has started at all, to be honest with you, and that's part of what we're pushing at the minute. Maybe a number of years' time, maybe technology will let you wear. They're obviously wearing the GPS system at the minute. We're looking at all this, that scientific, which is good. Again, there's so much information there. Sometimes less is more. Well, I see managers now taking off people because they've hit a threshold at 60 minutes. Do they take into account that this guy actually has a big heart? This guy runs through these things. Or do they say, oh, you know what, this guy's got to come off? So you've got to be very careful how you use that type of stuff. So that GPS is in the back of everyone's shirt at the minute. Again, we always try to keep up with the Joneses, so we're trying to do everything. But if you try to do everything, it'll be a matter of none. So you've really got to break down the less is more, and that's in the book as well. It's what matters to us. What are the big rocks in amongst all the pebbles on the seashore that we want to move? Is there 2 or 3? And move them at not just grab the pebbles. I mean, there's too many there. So that again is the Grow Coach side of it, and it's also in the book that Daragh so well put together. So that's kind of like to answer your question. You've asked me, will there be technology coming on people's jerseys and stuff? I think there's technology there that needs to be looked at the overall at the minute, and it hasn't been done, and we're trying to achieve that in Grow Coach and through the book.
And one thing there you mentioned that just stuck with me is the position of the player's feet, for example. So obviously that's something that boot technology could work into it, no?
Possibly could, but I'm with my hands up in this assignment. Technology and me don't go well together. So I'll have to hold my head up on that one to say that way. But I tell you, before we even dream of going there, there's enough technology there at the minute to go for coaches to go there and even look at the type of stuff I've mentioned about Grow Coach or in the book, because I don't believe this has been coached many places. I actually don't know of so many places it's been coached, and it's a massive, massive, vital part of getting the best out of your team. Does it mean you're going to win everything? It doesn't, because you may not have the same talent as the other guys have, but I tell you what you can do. You can bring your team to be maximized. Not like the old tradition of just kick the ball up and I told you to kick it, I told you to go forward, I told you to go back. I mean, that's gobbledygook. Now, if you want to continue that and think, oh, well, that's my tradition and that's fine, but don't be putting the word win in there. Chip away, have your social side of it, or else evolve or have an open mind to go and at least look at things that might make a difference. Because some people, and that's something I find in the GEA, is the old coaches in particular find it very hard to change. And to be fair, change is very difficult. We all know that. If you're sitting at your seat in the table for your dinner every evening, and you come home and someone's sitting there and you don't want them to move, you do want them to move because you cross your right leg over your left leg. You don't want to put your left leg over your right leg. So now you're in a place you want to be, because change is difficult. So, but people need to be open-minded and be open to see, well, is there an improvement in my team here? And unfortunately, in the GEA, we're very slow to look at that, in particular, the older coaches. And we'd love to see younger coaches coming through now with an open mind, but also our young academies, that this start of coaching goes in there now. Because, we're too quick to laud under 21 winners, minor winners. I won a minor myself in 1986. Didn't win a freaking senior, only won one kind of title in the next 11 years. So people think there's an automatic chance of winning because you win minor. Who's to say a team isn't very lucky in a semi-final and a final? And they are. I've seen it myself. But does all this footwork and balance and spatial awareness go without being dealt with at underage? Yes, it does. Does that leave you a less chance of making a senior winning team? Yes, it does. So let's put that stuff into the academies and start working with it.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna let you go in a sec. I just want to ask you, obviously, Kevin, you mentioned there with the Grow Coach. So give it a plug there. Tell us a bit more about it and how people can kind of look at this webinars. Tell us a bit more about Grow Coach.
Yeah, look, it's a resource, really. It's a platform for people, for coaches who want to go onto it and look at maybe some stuff that they maybe haven't seen before. We're not saying it's gospel, but we are saying, though, we'd be very surprised if you don't pick a lot of stuff out of this and pick what you want yourself. Look, it's dealing with the invisible game, like we spoke about. It's dealing with the culture environment of what good teams look like. It's dealing with the personalities of players. It's dealing with challenges that probably may hit you as a coach, and maybe a few tips on what we think would have worked for us. It might fall into your, but you're looking at the footwork, the off the ball movement, the stuff Daragh spoke about there. All that type of stuff. There's about 200 videos in there, based from maybe 30 seconds up to 6 minutes, all depending on what you're looking for. And there's starters, there's beginners, there's intermediates, and there's advanced, and session planners, that type of stuff that's in there that will give some kind of an inkling to coaches who maybe want to evolve a little bit. As I said, it's not gospel, but there's certainly something in there that may just tickle you a little bit to say that there's another part of coaching that we're missing here. So, it's www.cocoach.ie is a website, and we really are driving into clubs as much as possible. And again, I'm back to what we spoke about early on about the poor analysis and where football is at. It would be lovely maybe for us in particular to drive this out into other areas. That there's something in there, that the invisible game, and that it does work on certain aspects, and we'd like people to see that.
Brilliant. And Daragh, I'll let you plug the book. So tell us a bit about the book, where you can get it, and where it's available, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's obviously been a strange time to bring out a book, Simon. Shops not open for a length of time, and that sort of delayed us and that. But thankfully, things are opening up here in Ireland now anyway, but you can, so it's in all the good bookshops. It's online as well for any of your international viewers and listeners on bookstation.ie. I know it's on Eason's. It's available on Amazon as well, so for international buyers. And listen, I think there's a lot in it. I'm going to say it's very good, but I'm not a big-headed person by nature. Yeah. But what it is different. And not, as Kevin said, not everyone will agree with everything that's in it. But I think there are things to pluck out of it that people will find interesting. And that's quite apart from this what I think is an inspirational personal story.
Brilliant. And the last question I'm going to ask you guys, for Daragh, what's, for the rest of the year that we've left, and obviously with restrictions lifting in Ireland a little bit, what's kind of your objectives and goals for the rest of the year? Have you other stuff in the pipeline?
Yeah. I don't have a big project. I did, and that's probably fallen by the wayside because of COVID, and a couple of things like that have happened. But listen, there are always opportunities as well. And I'll be looking there, but I am busy on racing stuff. There might be more. I was presenting on TG Car there for the racing coverage, which was a new sort of outing. In at the deep end a bit, a steep learning curve, scary at times, but really beneficial personally, I think. And I would love more of those opportunities. There will be the press service with the Camogie Association as those competitions keep going. Loads of good features, which I love doing. And we'll just keep going. It's very busy, thankfully. And I find after a book that I probably need a little spell of rest before I throw myself into that cement mixer again, Simon. Yes. Yeah. But there will be another one.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant, Daragh. I wish you the best of luck with everything this year. Kevin, for you, what's your goals and objectives for the year? Do you, besides obviously pushing the Grow Coach and pushing the book as well and getting it out there, can we see you going back into management anywhere in the near future?
As I said, the COVID thing has a lot of stuff up in the heap at the minute. So thanks be to God it's getting back now, and the youngsters are getting back. My own family youngsters are starting to play again. So I'm looking forward to actually going to some of their matches, to be honest. I'm not roaring and shouting like Daragh mentioned about the book to get back this minute in relation to managing. Look, I love coaching as well. But look, this year will definitely run out before I do. And I really am putting a lot of work into the Grow Coach thing at the minute. So it's not just a kind of a here come day Sunday job. It's I will be pushing that for a number of months now. I think I believe in what's in it, and give that a good push as well. Just doing a bit of work for the day. So not really overly eagerly roaring to get back into management or anything like that. But look at like Daragh be having his breaks in the book. We'll see what happens. But I'm looking forward to get back to watching a bit of football.
Right, that's brilliant. Well, listen, guys, it's been a pleasure. I mean, it's very insightful, and there's a lot to learn, I think, for players and viewers and spectators and analysts in the whole game. But it's been really entertaining talking to you, and I'm looking forward to reading the book. I think I've looked at excerpts from the book, and it looks really interesting, and I think it'll open a lot of people's eyes, whether they're big football fans or not. I think it's going to be an interesting read. So I wish you the best of luck with it, and I want to say thanks very much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, and we hope to have you on again in the future, maybe.
Gentlemen, Simon, thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Kevin Walsh and Daragh Ó Conchúir, everybody. Okay, thank you very much, Kevin and Daragh. That was a really interesting interview, and thank you for shedding some light on the football scene in Ireland and things that have gone on that maybe some other people mightn't be aware of. And you can read all about that in their new book, The Invisible Game, which should be an exciting read. And that will be available from all good outlets. And we encourage you to buy local as well if you can for this book. Support your local shops. And really interesting interview, guys. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on to next week's guest. So next week we are going to be talking to Pauline Scanlon. So Pauline Scanlon is a vocalist and songwriter who galvanized the Irish music scene with her stunning debut album, Red Colour Sun, produced by John Reynolds over 10 years ago. Scanlon is capable of making the oldest ballads sound immediate and fresh while granting new material a timeless resonance. As a featured vocalist with the Sharon Shannon Band for 3 years, as a solo artist, and as a member of vocal duo Lumiere, Scanlon has entranced audiences the world over with her distinctly delicate intensity. As a vocalist, Pauline has performed and recorded with a wide range of artists including Damien Dempsey, Sinead O'Connor, Eleanor Shanley, Karen Casey, Andrea Corr, John Spillane, and Seamus Begley. So we're really looking forward to that interview, and we hope you tune in. And thank you for tuning in to this episode. And all we can say to you guys is it's a pleasure to have you on board and listening, and we value your support. I am Simon Kay, and it's been a pleasure once again. Take care of yourself, take care of your family, and till the next time, bye-bye.